Maduro's next court appearance is set for March 17th. Well, joining me now with more reaction is Jason Marczak. He's Vice President and Senior Director at the Atlantic Council's Adrian Arsh Latin America Center. Jason, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Matt.
Let's get into this, shall we, too? You know, it was developments that were happening over the course of the weekend, clearly, where Donald Trump says that the U.S. is going to, quote-unquote, run Venezuela. Marco Rubio backed out off of that insinuation, at least on Sunday, and it seems to be changing hour by hour. From what you understand, what is happening with the transition of power in Venezuela right now?
Well, right now what's happened is Delcy Rodriguez has taken, who is Maduro's vice president, has taken over as acting president of Venezuela. She was sworn in as acting president. She actually today in Venezuela is with the new National Assembly, which is aligned with the Chavista, took power as well. Delcy Rodriguez was there to oversee the new National Assembly. So she is consolidating the power, her internal power base within Venezuela, while also being publicly pronouncing the fact that she is not going to be subservient to the United States, but at the same time saying that, extending an olive branch and saying that she wants to cooperate with the United States.
This is clearly about oil, and Donald Trump, I think, has made that clear. But the state, and give us a sense, too, for viewers who have maybe not followed the situation as closely, but the state of the oil situation and reserves in Venezuela, and the infrastructure in particular. Yes, they have the largest, it's the largest amount of oil reserves across the globe, which some people may not know, but also the state of disrepair, especially since sanctions were instituted 7-8 years ago.
Yeah, man. I mean, the oil industry in Venezuela has enormous potential. Now, but recognize that the oil there is very heavy crude, right? So it takes a lot to process, especially if refineries are not set up for that type of heavy crude. The oil industry is severely dilapidated. There has been a lack of investment in the oil industry over the last many years. At the same time, Venezuela has reduced. At one point, it was about 3 million barrels per day at its heyday in the 1990s. Now it's about 1 million barrels per day. So the ability for Venezuela to produce is severely degraded, as well as there's a question of, as long as there's political instability within Venezuela, it's going to be very difficult to convince major oil companies to come in and make those investments. Recognize as well that a lot of oil companies had their assets expropriated in the late 2000s when they wouldn't agree to the terms that Chavez put forward at that time.
Right. And again, we're talking, I've seen estimates too, Jason, whether it's like, at minimum, something like $60–70 billion, but could be up to like $1 trillion in order of investment in order to get it going again.
Yeah, I mean, the number, I mean, I think once teams go in and see the degraded state of the oil industry, it'll be important to see, how bad the infrastructure is. Also take into account that a lot of the oil technocrats who live in Venezuela, and Venezuela had some of the best oil technicians in the world prior to the beginning of the Chavez, the Maduro regime. Most of them have fled Venezuela, right? They've come to Houston, they've gone to other parts of the world. So there's also a lack of human capacity within Venezuela as well.
I'm curious also your thoughts on the rest of Latin America too, as well. As we hear from Donald Trump that Colombia is possibly going in, and possibly maybe in his crosshairs, mentioned Mexico as well by name, which I think is more significant, at least for right now. But it doesn't feel like Donald Trump might be done and is trying to send a message to a number of these countries that the U.S. is possibly, I'm not going to say probably, but possibly going to be involved with in some way.
Well, I think, we heard this on Saturday, actually, the President Trump mentioning actually Colombia and Cuba on Saturday, and then followed that up with regard to Mexico. But look, the Mexican cooperation with the United States is profound. You can't compare Mexico to Venezuela. The Mexican delegations are continuously in Washington on a weekly basis. Mexico has cooperated very closely with the United States on measures to improve security, on bringing more security assets to the U.S.-Mexico border, on cracking down on fentanyl. There's a very strong relationship. President Trump and President Sheinbaum were with each other at the Kennedy Center, along with PM Carney just a few weeks ago for the World Cup selection draw. So it's a very strong relationship between the U.S. and Mexico. Now, Colombia, on the other hand, has historically been a very important historical U.S. ally. that alliance has been severely degraded, especially in the last year. President Petro is sanctioned; he's had his visa removed. But Colombia does have a presidential election this coming year, and there will be a new president in Colombia in August. And of course, Colombia's military capabilities are significantly different from those of Venezuela, largely U.S. Military equipment.
Okay, Jason Marczak, Vice President and Senior Director at the Atlantic Council's Adrian Arsh Latin America Center. Thanks for your insight today, Jason.
Thanks for having me on.